Confidence Network for the strong, not the weak.
Moorish history is probably top 3 as it concerns mainstream African history. The African diaspora can't seem to get enough of it. The Moors represent so many different things to us as Afro-descended people, but perhaps the most valuable thing this history achieves for us is a sense that Afro-descended people achieved glory in the past. Why? Well, because Moorish history simply demands respect and cannot be ignored. However, despite all of this, Moorish history for Afro-descended people has always carried an asterisk, a blemish if you will, because the identity of the Moors is constantly challenged. So today, I wanted us to get a better understanding about who the Moors were and talk about our role as Afro-descended people in establishing Moorish legacy. What up, African world? It's Home Team here, and welcome back to another video of African history, culture, and worldview. By supporting this channel on Patreon, you're helping in the creation of these videos and supporting this content. If you'd like access to full courses and sources, or you simply want to show your support, you may do so by clicking the Patreon link in the description box below. The term Moor itself consistently referred to Muslims from North Africa, whether they were referring to the various Amazigh populations or other Africans who originated further south in places like Senegal, Guinea, or Mali. Despite what we in the diaspora think, the term Moor is very broad and has been used interchangeably between these two populations, and was never used exclusively to refer to either of them in the literature. In some occasions, you'd even hear Europeans differentiating between the so-called white Moors and black Moors. There are many Moorish dynasties we can actually discuss, but my focus will be the Almoravids and the Almohads, so please keep that in mind. When the African diaspora thinks about a Moor, they tend to think of the black soldiers or rulers who conquered Spain, but we hardly ever refer to the names of the actual dynasties who accomplished this. It's important to be specific when speaking about Moorish history. When Islam spread across North Africa in the 7th century, many Africans converted and created their own Islamic armies to further the cause. These armies later became known as the Moors to various Europeans. It may surprise some of us to learn that black soldiers have been used in the Middle East since ancient times. They were not new at all. It was only because of the mobilization of Islam and the great number in which various Africans joined forces that they then became known as Moors later on in history. Under various Persian rulers, Africans were employed as mercenaries in armies to help conquer and control new regions. Africans in Nubia, specifically, had a world-renowned reputation for being excellent archers, and their services were in high demand. Even before the Arabs swept across North Africa, black soldiers were present in their armies. One of the earliest mentions of a black soldier, or what Europeans would later refer to as a Moor, was named Washi. Washi lived during the time of Muhammad, and it was said that he distinguished himself in battle, especially during the capture of Mecca. The truth is, in the early days of Islam, Arabs began to extend their hand to enslaved people, whether they were from the Middle East or North Africa. They began to entice them to join their armies, and in return, they would gain freedom. This was an excellent strategy by the Arabs to gain a huge loyal following, and it greatly diversified their military ranks. Over time, this strategy began to be used amongst the Amazigh populations in North Africa who converted to Islam. In the 9th century, North African slave armies became more desirable as ambitious Amazigh governors sought them out to create autonomous principalities. They believed that these soldiers from Inner Africa would be loyal to them in totality because they didn't come from the ethnic group that they came from, and so was not invested in the needs and concerns of the majority Amazigh population. The North African caliphs themselves began to adopt this tradition to comfortably enforce their power and not worry about any Arab or Amazigh dissidents. In other words, the recruitment of black men further south became the very backbone of Moorish supremacy. Now, it's important to understand that black soldiers were always used in Islamic armies, even before the 9th century, but they did not become supreme, if you will, until about this time. For example, under the Umayyad dynasty, the first emir of Cordoba in Spain, Abd al-Rahman I, who came to the throne in 756, was known to have kept a large personal guard of black soldiers. He founded the Muslim dynasty that ruled a large portion of Spain for nearly 3 centuries, and all his successors used black soldiers, especially to maintain order. Now, here's where a lot of the confusion comes in. People may look at this early Moorish history and say, well, the Moors were black people. However, we can't ignore the presence of Arab or Amazigh soldiers. In fact, at various times in Moorish history, there were more Arab and Amazigh soldiers than black soldiers, especially before the 9th century. If there is to be any value in the statement of saying the Moors were black, we have to keep in mind that it's time sensitive, because when discussing events before the 9th century, we can only use it to express how black soldiers were used to reinforce the Sultan's power. When the 9th century arose, the face of the Moors began to change fairly quickly. Ahmad Tulin, who came to power in 884, the first independent ruler of Muslim Egypt, began to rely heavily on black soldiers, most of which came from Sudan, many of them Nubian. Upon his death, he's said to have possessed 24,000 so-called white soldiers and 45,000 black soldiers. In essence, his army consisted of black men. His son was protected by 1,000 black soldiers alone. One chronicler had this to say, wearing black cloaks and black turbans so that a watcher could fancy them to be a black sea spreading over the face of the earth because of the blackness of their color and of their garments. With the glitter of their shields, of the chasing on their swords, and of the helmets under their turbans, they made a really splendid sight. So it would seem as though the 9th century really ushered in the power of black soldiers, giving Moorish armies its distinction. Any European army who had never seen black soldiers in such great numbers would have certainly spoke about it and identified them as being the power of the Muslims. And if we look throughout the literature, this was indeed the case. This is why Europeans in their artwork oftentimes represented the power of the Moors with an image of a black man. This is why the focus on the Almoravids and the Almohads is significant when speaking about our contribution as Afro-descendant people to Moorish history, because these 2 Moorish ruling dynasties in Spain arguably used the most black soldiers and had rulers who were indistinguishable from the various African ethnic groups further south, like in the case of Yaqub al-Manzur of the Almohads, whom I consider the greatest Moorish leader in the history of Muslim Spain. His mother was a black woman, believed to be from either Mali or Senegal. One of the primary reasons for the rapid growth of black soldiers was the need for North African Amazigh rulers to have complete control over their soldiers and not be challenged by any intermediate power or opposing ethnic loyalties that would come from Arabs or other Amazigh clans. It would be very difficult for black soldiers originating from the interior of Africa to rally up the local Arab or Amazigh populace because of the ideological, social, and political divisions between them. It was black men who served to maintain the ruler in his palace, protect the capital, and uphold imperial authority. The Moorish tradition of black soldiers continued to develop in Morocco centuries after their expulsion from Spain in 1492. In the 17th century to the early 18th century, the Sultan of Morocco, Moulay Ismail, made great use of black soldiers to solidify his power. He himself was the son of an Arab prince and a black woman. Moulay Ismail felt the immediate threat to his rule would come from the Arabs, Amazighs, and the Turks in Algeria. He assembled the largest army in Moroccan history, consisting of 250,000 black soldiers, allowing him to exert great authority through which he was able to undermine the power and influence of local tribal groups in his nation. Moulay went even further by demanding that the other Moroccan ethnic groups turn over their weapons and their horses to his all-black Moorish army. Our agency in Moorish history as Afro-descendant people cannot be denied, as it so often has. I believe there just needs to be balance when speaking about the Moors. We need to be specific about time periods and dynasties because diversity did exist. Morse history is akin to a blanket. We just have to identify our specific threads that make the whole. Well, I'm all out, guys. If you like these videos and want to help in its continued production, consider supporting the home team on patreon.com. The link is in the description box below. Know thyself. Remember your ancestors. Peace.
Good evening. This is H. B. This is Build and Destroy, right here from Late Rent Loud Music Studios on Built for This Network. Thank you for tuning in. It's been a blast. It's been a hell of a week. It has been one interesting week. We have had a lot of I don't want to call it spiritual awakening, but we have had a lot of infighting. There's been a lot of negative energy in our community, and hopefully I can uplift that spirit and give you something to think about. If nothing else, put you in a state of mind that we can work together to get things done. It's been an interesting week, as I just said, and I want to acknowledge everybody. And before I start each one of my shows, you know how I start the shows? I acknowledge my ancestors. It was taught to me that when you're speaking publicly, you should acknowledge your ancestors. Your ancestors will send down protections and blessings, and you send out respect and adoration to your ancestors. Without them, there is no you. So I do that. Respect to everybody in my family, my immediate family, everybody who has put me in this situation. I used to name them, but I just want them to know everybody who's connected to my mom and my dad, spiritually, physically, mentally, and my friends and family. With any ancestors that are crossed over to the other side, I want to give you mad respect. Thank you for being you and helping me become a better me. Thank you very much. With that being said, I want to thank each and every person in the chat room. I don't name everybody individually. As you speak throughout the show, I will acknowledge you if you have something to either challenge or add to the show. Thank you for tuning in. You could be doing a lot of things. And once this show is over, please tune in to New Max Radio and support the one and only Girly Girl with her woman extravaganza. It's special. It's a special time for women in America, women worldwide. And Girly Girl is doing what she should do as an adult. Salute her sisters, because those blessings will come back to her. That's not why she's doing it because she's an awesome person, but we need to acknowledge the sisters and give them praise. With that being said, as I stated, man, we are in the midst of an interesting week, and with that interesting week, we first and foremost, I want to say happy birthday to one Maxine Waters. Queen Maxine Waters. She became of national prominence recently. Well, she's been doing great work in the Congress, state of California for years, but she came of national prominence by claiming her time. Before I do that, salute to D Great.
It's your boy D Great from South Central. Tune in on Sunday for Sunday Night Love Jones. 4 o'clock, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and on Mondays for Monday Night Love Jones, 4 o'clock, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time for good music, good conversation, and good vibes. It's all about the love. Yeah, man.
Big ups to my brother D Great. And again, let me continue. Salute to one Maxine Waters. Leo's in the building as usual. Y'all know I'm repping the Leos this entire month because I'm one of them. But salute to Maxine Waters. Happy birthday, Queen. You've been doing tremendous work for us in the community. And everybody who doesn't know her, you need to get to know her. it is imperative that we know